We are now live, so are you okay to get ready to go? Let's go for it. Good morning, everybody. It's, as you can see, Neil Jenkinson here, Regional Manager for the North Regions here at BIBA, hosting today's webinar, as you can see, with plug into a smarter way of driving with our friends from Jackson Lee Underwriting. And Nick Mohan today is kindly steering the ship. So as usual, guys, if you don't mind, any questions, please pop them in the chat box to me. And I will hold them till the end, and we'll run through them with Nick after he's finished his presentation. So, Nick, without further ado, I'll pop off camera, mute myself. Over to you, my friend. Thanks for putting this on. All the best.
Okay. Thanks very much, and thank you for the opportunity to present this webinar today. We'll just have a look at the learning objectives. So we're looking at why there is a significant growth in salary sacrifice schemes, the advantages they provide to employers and employees, and the importance of early termination insurance, and what's required to enable BIBA members to obtain a quotation. So just a little bit about us. We're Jackson Lee Underwriting, established in 1991. We're the BIBA Gap and early termination appointed scheme holder, and we've been providing early termination insurance solutions since 2000. For my sins, I'm Joint Managing Director of Jackson Lee. Hands-on day-to-day involvement in particularly the ETI area of the business and what's happening. So I think it's always good to start with some background to these things to give you some understanding of what's going on and why it's going on. And the first thing to look at is the end of the Ice Age, or I've used a snippet from Disney here with the Ice Age, the meltdown. UK government had committed to a ban on ICE car and van sales from 2035. ICE means internal combustion engine, and originally it was 2030. But if you follow the news, you'll have heard that Rishi Sunak announced a couple of weeks ago that he was moving that ban back to 2035. What that means is that post 2035, only hybrid and electric car sales will be allowed. But by 2030, the expectation will be the majority of new vehicle sales will be electric. Why is this happening, and why will the majority of vehicle sales be electric by 2030? This is all part of the UK's commitment to be net zero carbon by 2050. And with effect from next year, there's a new scheme that's been introduced called the Zero Emissions Vehicle Mandate. And what this means, and what this does, is it states that in effect from 2030, 80% of new car sales have to be electric. And next year, at this 2024, 22% of new car sales will have to be electric. And this means that if companies don't meet these thresholds, they'll be charged £15,000 for each vehicle sale beneath that threshold. That's quite punitive, but it's been confirmed by the Department of Transport. So if you follow the news, and you'll have seen how the manufacturers have reacted to Rishi Sunak's statement, is they've said, we're going to stay on track to deliver electric vehicles because it's going to hit them in the pocket if they don't. The question we're often asked is, why electric versus hydrogen cars? Because that's the alternative fuel supply that manufacturers have been looking at for some time now. What I've just highlighted here is some key points that we're aware of in the difference between the two. Electric temperature can affect the battery performance, charging times. That's a negative to it. Production of some electric cars can be harmful to the environment. If you follow the lobbying from the petrol and diesel community, you'll see that they'll say, yes, but might be zero tailpipe emissions, but it costs an awful lot to manufacture these cars and then to ship them over to the United Kingdom. However, the benefits outweigh this over the lifetime of the vehicle. Hydrogen, by alternative, is there's not many refueling stations. Hydrogen cars use flammable fuel, petrol's flammable, more expensive to buy and maintain. And currently, the support from the automotive industry is that electric is the most advanced solution compared to an internal combustion engine. So electric cars are the future of transportation. Salary sacrifice schemes can make them more accessible for everybody. It's good to get a quote, and none better than Elon Musk, who is the leading light at Tesla. Tesla is here to stay and keep fighting for the electric car revolution. What you've got is Tesla as a brand. There is a whole host of new manufacturers entering the UK. I'm not an expert in the building of a car, but in addition to your household brands and the propositions they have with electric vehicles, you've got many new entrants coming from China and the USA, and these are just some names that you may or not be familiar with. All of these providers are offering electric vehicle solutions now in the UK. The journey is evolving and completely different. You know, with some of them you won't see showrooms. You know, I was at a conference last week and I saw Genesis, which is Hyundai's proposition, and that's all done on a concierge basis via an app. So even servicing your car, a low loader comes to your house, drops off a courtesy car, takes away your car, services it, brings it back, all concierge based. So a revolution in how we are used to buying cars, and that whole journey is being delivered by the early adopters to the electric vehicle. And the expectation is that we're just going to see a growth in more manufacturers coming to the UK market over the next few years. The question then is, we know what's going on. We know that the UK government has commitments to zero emissions by 2050 and targets as of 2035, and we know that there is a new tariff to be charged to businesses. But what additional factors are fueling the growth? And the significant thing is salary sacrifice schemes. So what is a salary sacrifice scheme? Well, it's an agreement between an employer and its employee to reduce their taxable salary in exchange for a non-cash benefit, for example, a car. You may have heard of Cycle to Work. That's another scheme that's salary sacrifice. Salary sacrifice schemes are regulated by HMRC. And in salary, the key point to note is that in entering into a salary sacrifice scheme, an employee cannot fall beneath the minimum wage. What are the benefits to the employer in offering a salary sacrifice scheme? Well, first thing is, sacrificing salary, you're reducing the amount of salary payable, which could have an effect on reducing the national insurance contributions as much as 13.8%. One of the other things that's attractive for businesses is the benefits that you offer your employees. Offering salary sacrifice makes it a tangible benefit for your employee and more appealing to retain them in what the current industry says is, you know, the great resignation of 2023-24. And salary sacrifice helps deliver against sustainability targets. Every business is looking at ESG, environmental strategy, environmental social governance. And on an electric car, if you're providing that to your employees, not only essential business car users, but the whole workforce, you not only have zero tailpipe emissions for business miles, but you have that for personal miles as well. That's a big tick as far as businesses are concerned at the moment. From an employee, the thing is, there's no credit checks. If you go to a dealership to buy a car, and you're looking at personal contract purchase or personal contract hire purchase, all of those types of finance arrangements, you have to be proposed to the funder, and a credit footprint is made on your history, your credit history. That doesn't apply under salary sacrifice schemes. By participating in salary sacrifice, you get access to the latest in vehicle technology. Between 30 and 40% of what the equivalent costs are for a personal finance arrangement. Things will include maintenance and motor insurance in some instances, further reducing your costs. And mileage costs are cheaper than diesel. And we've got an improving charging infrastructure. Hyundai vehicles that we saw last week, Genesis, they make best use of what's known as superchargers. And a typical charge on a supercharger is 10 minutes, which will take you from 0 to 80% refuel, and that would cost you £39. If you have a Genesis card, which each owner does, that's reduced down to £13. And you'll heard of things such as Zap Maps, and which is making best use of apps to show you where you can get charging. And more people who've got home charging make that accessible for people visiting their vicinity, and can make money out of giving you access to charging. So the whole thing is improving from an infrastructure basis. So benefit in kind. It's important to understand how this works from a salary sacrifice scheme, and what are the incentives in supporting salary sacrifice schemes as far as HMRC are concerned. So benefit in kind, instead of paying with post-tax income, the fixed monthly payments for the car are taken from the employee's salary before any income tax or NI is deducted. Through a salary sacrifice scheme, although it's a benefit to the employee, it's treated as a company car, and therefore company car tax is payable. However, HMRC is committed to 2% benefit in kind from 2022 until 2025. Thereafter, a 1% incremental increase until 2028. So, tax year 2028, people will be paying 5% benefit in kind on pure electric vehicles. Compare that to a current diesel, where you could have as high as 37%. Analysts' view is that post 2028, because the UK government are still going to have this drive to convert to electric, that salary sacrifice will remain a competitive option for businesses. What's been the impact in the current year? Well, BVRLA, which is the British Vehicle Rental Leasing Association's figures for quarter 21, the salary sacrifice schemes grew 41% year on year, with 91% of registrations being for pure electric. August, new car registrations alone were 17,243. And I've just had the figures for September, which has taken that, which shows battery electric vehicle registrations were 45,323. So it is double digit in terms of the penetration versus diesel and petrol cars, and is only going to continue to grow over the next few years. Salary sacrifice is a great option for businesses. It allows employees to have access to state-of-the-art new vehicles at a fraction of the cost. What are the risks associated to that? The first thing to say is that early termination is an agreement that you bind into as a business. You are effectively underwriting that the employees will make the payments month to month. You're deducting that through PAYE, and you're paying that across to the leasing company who's providing the vehicles. Should you wish to terminate that agreement early, and the typical period of these agreements is 48 months that we're seeing at the moment, but you can take a salary sacrifice arrangement for a shorter period as 24 months, then it's punitive for you if you cancel early, and the charges will be between 40 and 50% of outstanding rentals. What does that mean in real terms? Well, if you look at a Porsche Taycan, which is probably at the top end of the range, you're looking at a monthly rental of between £1,200 and £1,500. So it's very simple maths to work out what that charge might be if somebody were to terminate that agreement in the first year. The other issue that businesses have with salary sacrifice schemes is motor insurance. Now, I'm not here to talk about motor insurance. I'll just share with you some snippets. What they're looking for is fixed price solutions. And that means that they want to know, or that the employee wants, a hassle-free journey. They've entered into a salary sacrifice scheme, get access to a car, it's maintained and it's taxed. I need to insure it. So I need to know what that fixed monthly cost is likely to be for the motor insurance. There are limited people, or businesses rather, that are offering solutions in this space. We're aware of Lloyd Latchford, which is now part of Atlanta, which I think is now Market Study. Brett Line Group, they have a direct-to-consumer proposition for salary sacrifice, and LV, who are part of Allianz. Not a lot of other solutions out there, and yet time and again, when you talk to businesses who are participating in salary sacrifice, what you're seeing is that same question: what do we do about the motor insurance? Just look at some example claims. These are real claims and real incidents that have occurred. You can see there you've got a Kia Niro terminated after 8 months as a result of resignation, and there was a termination charge of $4,324. A Tesla Model 3 after 15 months, loss of license on medical grounds, $6,032, and a Peugeot, again resignation, £4,013. So it depends on your viewpoint as to whether you consider these to be a significant claim or not. But for a business, dependent on the size of the workforce, dependent on how many are adopting to take on the salary sacrifice schemes, and depends on what the resignation rate is, it could be a significant loss that they're not making arrangements for in their profit and loss, and therefore they're looking for insurance. And what you tend to find is with new solutions, and salary sacrifice isn't new, but what we're seeing is new growth as a result of the HMRC commitment on benefit in kind. Early participants are risk adverse, and they're looking for insurance protection. That's where early termination insurance comes in. The right early termination insurance, first thing to say is that it's A-rated security, and we cover limited perils. So we'll cover resignation. At the moment, the single biggest concern of the business is what happens if an employee resigns. So as we've alluded to earlier in the presentation, if you resign from the contract terminates, and therefore the company is liable for 40 or 50%, depending on what the terms and conditions are of the rental agreement, of outstanding charges. We'll also cover accidental death, cover loss of license on medical grounds. Important one for certain industry types is dismissal as a result of gross misconduct. And we see, particularly in certain service sectors such as teaching and nursing, where they stipulate that they actually need gross misconduct as a factor, and that is gross misconduct for definition is that the employee has breached their contract of employment, the contract has been terminated with immediate effect with no pay in lieu of notice. We mentioned earlier in the presentation around minimum wage, and the key point that in sacrificing salary, whatever that proportion of salary is, you cannot fall beneath minimum wage threshold. We write in an extension called paternity leave instalment waiver, and paternity for definition is adoption, maternity or paternity leave. That says if an individual takes leave from business as a result of adoption, maternity or paternity leave, then we will maintain their payments for up to 12 months. That means that if that company applies statutory pay during the time that the individual is on leave from the business, that statutory pay may well take them or beneath the minimum wage, which is where the top up then we pay the instalments so that they are not in breach of HMRC rules. Premiums are calculated as a percentage of the monthly rental agreement. The monthly rental agreement, we will take into consideration the maintenance, because most of these vehicles these days will come with a maintenance package and you would want one. And maintenance can extend to tyres, and tyres can be costly on electric cars. If you think about the energy that goes through the accelerator on electric cars, it's completely different to an ICE vehicle, and you do get wear, particularly on rear wheel drive on the tyres, which can be covered under the maintenance. And the premium can be paid as a single premium, so that's for the 4-year period or 3-year period, or 2, whichever is applicable, or it can be paid as a monthly pay. And that is a monthly pay and not a premium finance arrangement where we're adding interest to it. It's a monthly pay option via direct debit. As with any insurance policy, there are terms and conditions. One of the things to note is we have a deferment period. That means the period between the start of the contract and when an individual or a business is eligible to make a claim under the cover. And that's 3 months for all sections, with the exception of paternity leave, which is 9 months. Who is eligible for the cover? Well, it's available to employers offering a salary sacrifice scheme to their employees. If you work with a business, limited liability business, even partnerships of any size, they will be looking at salary sacrifice at the moment. The automotive sector, the leasing market, has a massive drive on around salary sacrifice schemes. There are webinars, there are forums being hosted in hotels up and down the country from a multitude of providers who are working hard to try and get businesses converted to salary sacrifice schemes. Dependent on the size of the business, they will have other obligations in relation to decarbonising their business, and electric cars are a way forward in doing that. So if you just talk to any of your customers, you'll be, I would be surprised if they've never heard of salary sacrifice in relation to electric cars, because it is very relevant at the moment. The named driver nominated to the vehicle, so that's the employee effectively, is eligible for inclusion under the cover if they're participating in an employee-backed scheme. They must hold a full driving license for the duration of the insurance. The vehicle must be fully comprehensively insured. Needs to be 5 years old or less. And the maximum contract hire or lease term we will do is 48 months under the salary sacrifice scheme. And the vehicle mustn't exceed a P11D valuation of 125,000. We do have some leeway on that. as with anything, when somebody's taking a car, it's a bit of an emotive purchase, and so you tend to find that the base model, like all the rinky dinks added to it, and that's the price upwards. But for a rule of thumb, it's 125,000, higher values on referral. So key exclusions, a claim which occurs during the initial deferment period would not be covered. It's important to understand that this is effectively a contract hire agreement, and therefore there are rules that apply to contract hire agreements. For those is you contract to a set mileage. If you go over and above that, it's punitive to you and you pay excess mileage charges. That's not covered under this insurance. Similarly, BVRLA, British Vehicle Rental Leasing Association, they have what they call fair wear and tear conditions as to how the vehicle needs to be returned. So scratches, minor dents, scuffs on leather, etc. you have to put right. That's not covered under this insurance. And similarly, if somebody were to fall into arrears, that wouldn't be covered. Any period where the named driver is in receipt of payment in lieu of notice, that's specifically onto the Christmas conduct element. Any circumstance can rise to a claim which is known or can reasonably be expected at the start date. And again, that tends to be, we get those queries around maternity, where an employee enters the scheme knowing that they were pregnant and thinking that they would benefit from the waiver benefit. And again, we won't cover that. Pandemic exclusions there, you'll see, obviously, you work in insurance, so you'll see that on many insurance contracts. If they're self-employed or on a fixed term contract that ends prior to the end of the agreement, we won't cover that. If you lose your license as a result of a motoring offence, drink drive being one of the primary ones, the way salary sacrifice schemes work is, you might have a partner on your insurance where they can still continue to drive, but you can't. If you don't want to maintain those payments and you wish to terminate them, that will be a liability of the employee and wouldn't be covered under this insurance. How schemes are set up are agreed by the employer and the leasing company. So they will agree as to which employees are eligible for the schemes. And, you're not going to put somebody in a scheme who's on a probationary period. You shouldn't be putting somebody in a scheme on a probationary period. And we're not going to cover you on the early termination if you were to do that. And again, we won't cover cyber incidents under the early termination insurance. So, in summary, internal combustion engine sales are in decline, and we see that in other products that we write, such as gap insurance, particularly diesel engines at the moment. UK government is committed to a 2035 ban on internal combustion engine cars and van sales, and that's going to be released by the low emission charging that comes into place next year. The tariff to hit 22%, and any sales that fall beneath that, each manufacturer will contribute or have to contribute £15,000 per vehicle, and by 2030 that's got to be 80% of new car sales. Salary sacrifice schemes mean that employees have access to affordable electric cars. You look at the numbers and they are literally, in some instances, as much as 50% cheaper by a salary sacrifice scheme than a personal finance or leasing option. Electric cars are a great way to reduce carbon footprint and save money on fuel and maintenance costs, with the exception of tyres. You do have zero tailpipe emissions, and that is a big tick towards businesses' ESG. There are risks associated with salary sacrifice schemes, and ensure that customers are protected from early termination penalties, it's recommended they have early termination insurance. And our own experience of seeing this rolled out has been that the first two questions asked is, what happens if an employee resigns? How do I protect myself? One is you can self-fund these things. You can put some money aside. Not many businesses like doing that because money affects cash flow. You buy insurance and early termination is the insurance. There aren't a lot of carriers in the market writing early termination at the moment. We deal with two, and others have had a dabble but haven't really got the data to back it up. When you look at some of the businesses' attritional rates on resignation, we've seen some proposals come in where you've got a workforce of maybe 200 and you've got 50–60% resignation run in the last 3 years. So you need to be looking at, is that the type of risk you want to write? Some companies have really high levels. Some companies have great employee loyalty, great retention rate of employees, and it's not a problem for them. They might wish to just say, well, risk is limited and we'll put £10,000 aside just in case a claim occurs. But most are looking for insurance, looking for motor insurance alternatives. Just looking at reflective statement on this, we've looked at the growth in electric cars driven by salary sacrifice schemes, some of the factors that are influencing the move to electric. What I would say is at the moment, electric's here to stay. Every manufacturer that you can think of has a proposition, whether it's hybrid or car with a plug on it, as it's referred to in the industry. And you've got such a growth in new entrants to the space. The investment that's going into this is only telling you that electric is here for the foreseeable future. We've looked at the benefits of salary and risks associated with salary sacrifice schemes. We've considered the importance of early termination insurance and why businesses operating these schemes should consider this valuable protection. The hit rate at the moment we're seeing is about 95%. That's quote to conversion. The 5% that don't probably aren't going ahead with salary sacrifice schemes at this stage. It is a clunky process managing salary sacrifice schemes, which is why most businesses will partner with a leasing broker or a leasing company who will have software to do this for them, to collect the payments, to deal with the maintenance, to offer the employee the suite of vehicles that are accessible via the amount of salary that wishes to be sacrificed. But our view is that the insurance should sit with the brokers who actually offer the advice and the professionalism to the business to look at these risks and provide the appropriate solutions, and not with the leasing broker market, where we're aware that some leasing companies, Lex is a big partner, they offer a form of early termination where it's capped at £5,000. It can only cover a maximum of 5 vehicles. Well, penetration level of salary sacrifice schemes, the run rates are between 12 and 15% in businesses. That's no good for any business who's got 50 or more staff. Hopefully it's been interest, probably slightly quicker than you expected me to be, Neil, so I apologise for that.
No, don't, Nick, please. I think the thing for me is it's informative because it's on the horizon, isn't it? Steve White used to use an old analogy, whatever the word is, that there's a train on the horizon, it's coming towards us, there's a light and it's coming, and it's going to be with us very, very soon. So it's great to have information to hand, and I really do appreciate you putting the session on. We have actually had a couple of questions, Nick, actually, so if you don't mind, I'll just get you through them. Do people have to issue a policy for each employee who participates in the salary sacrifice scheme?
The way it's structured is because effectively these are company cars, The difference is that the employee is paying for the company car via its salary, via their salary. So we issue a policy, an annual policy in the name of the company.
Mm-hmm.
And then what happens is, so any business, you won't have all members of staff wanting to do a salary sacrifice scheme going on cover day one. It's just impossible. You've got a lead time on vehicle delivery. So what will happen is you tend to find it's middle stroke senior management that go first. I don't know why that is. Directors of companies may be looking after themselves before they roll it down to the general workforce, or maybe they just want to make sure it works properly. So you'll get, so we'll do an annual policy, and that will start on the date the first vehicle is being delivered.
Okay.
So the first vehicle goes on. That vehicle then will run for its natural duration of its agreement. So if that's a 48 months, it will run for 48 months cover. And then what will happen is, as and when the business has new people enrolled in the scheme and their cars are delivered, those vehicles are declared to us and just added. And if they're paying on direct debit, the direct debit just increased each month. If they're paying by single premium, they're just invoiced for the premium.
Excellent. Thank you, mate. Thank you for that. Let's have a look. Next one. Can an individual have more than one car on a scheme?
The simple answer is yes, they can. The key point that we have to remember is that if you are putting a second car on, it's the affordability. You can't fall beneath the minimum wage. So whilst you individually are not being scored from a finance perspective, your employer would be looking at it saying, well, are you going to be able to afford those two vehicles on the salary you're on, because they know you're making a long-term commitment to that.
Sure.
But the answer is yes, you can.
Thank you, mate. Thank you. Anne from the audience has just asked us a question. She's probably the nail on the head for me, actually. Electric cars, are they still good for older drivers who may not drive them very often? And the reason why she's asking that question is, does the charge run off? Like it just sort of sits there and decharges itself, unlike petrol?
Yeah, it does. It depends how long you're going to leave it for. Cars work for older drivers. I think the question, moreover, is if I'm being critical of the industry, I think what's happened is we've gone from internal combustion engine vehicles, which everybody knows, petrol or diesel, yep, manual or automatic. We know how they operate. And we're going with a government sort of carrot and stick. There's a carrot saying salary sacrifice schemes are here, benefit in kind, BIC is 2% to 2025, 1% thereafter. That's a massive commitment from government because it costs a fortune. And then the stick element of manufacturers, if you don't have a proportion of your sales being pure electric by 2024, 25, 26, etc., and 80% by 2030, we're going to fine you 15,000, which is quite punitive.
Yeah.
What we've not done is we've not had a halfway point of let's go hybrid first, because the big challenge you've got is you get into an electric car and they're like rockets on wheels.
Are they?
You've got forward, reverse. You've got, in some, you've got one pedal. In others, you've got two. But if you put your foot down, because you're a bit club-footed, you know, some of the performance of some of these cars are as fast as Porsches or Ferraris or Aston Martins. You know, they're 0 to 60 in 3.4 seconds, 4 seconds. Now, if anybody is at a loose end of a lunchtime, have a look on YouTube. There's some videos of mature drivers. There's one in particular of a lady gets into a Toyota, electric Toyota, and goes through the showroom window from a standing start outside. She's got the wrong gear, hits the accelerator, and it just takes off and literally goes through the window, and all chaos ensues. But what we are seeing is certain leasing companies are, identifying some of the challenges with motor insurance.
Mm-hmm.
And so there are online video tutorial around that whole driving experience of an electric car. But the question about the battery, yes, the battery is does reduce. It's like anything, if you leave your phone and don't use it for how many hours, eventually it will run out of battery. I think there's a mandate now from government on new build houses that electric chargers have to be part of the build.
Yeah.
If you ever were investing in stocks and shares and you had the opportunity to invest in anybody who is doing chargers or installation, that's the way to go, because at the moment and for the next at least 5 years, you're going to see a massive growth in charging. Infrastructure, yeah. I mean, a big part of that, if you think about it, is parking. And there's already test cases in Europe. Germans, of course, are always at the forefront of anything clever. BMW 7 Series electric. Now in Germany, you can run to the shops. You go into the shops to do a bit of a run round on a Saturday morning. You drive it into the NCP equivalent. You drive it over a disc, like put your iPhone or your iWatch on.
Oh, like the charging point. Yeah.
Drive it there. The car tells the parking it's there, and it started charging. You come back, started up. The car tells the parking that it stopped charging. Your rental you're paying on it just gets €2 of parking charge added for that period. But in the time you've charged your car and you've parked, and it might be 20 minutes, but that could be enough to just give you a boost in mileage.
And you've got your loaf of Warbies at the same time. That's amazing.
If you look at anywhere where people live in, look at your pubs, look at your shopping malls, your out-of-town shopping, you'll start to see, if not already there, infrastructure starting to improve with more charging going in.
Yeah, most definitely. I've seen that, Nick. I think obviously I've got a big Tesco near me, and there's probably, 4 or 5 or 6 charging points. That's all there is. But if you go to the Trafford Centre, there's a whole line of them now. There's a lot more infrastructure going in. That's really interesting.
Well, if you just mentioned the Broker Expo last week, if you go to the NEC, there's a whole car park.
Yeah.
Where you've got a Starbucks and what have you, and you've got everything is electric charging bays. So it's only going to grow, and you'll see more of people sharing the charging. Where it's a bit like if you're going to Twickenham to watch rugby, you can go online, you can find parking. Somebody lets you park the car and they drive for 15-20 quid. Well, you'll be able to go and charge your car on somebody's drive on their home charger. So yeah, it's there's a massive growth happening in this whole sector.
Thanks for that. And I hope that answered the question for you. And there's just one final one, Nick, from me. Somebody's asked, if they leave the salary sacrifice agreement, can it be transferred to somebody else?
The simple answer is no. What could happen is if that individual went to a new company and that company were accepting that the agreement was novated to that company, because you've got to remember that the employer you're working for, ABC Limited, they're deducting it from your wages and paying the leasing company. If you move to a new employer, that new employer agrees to that, sets up a salary sacrifice scheme, that could happen.
Okay.
Your existing employer could try and get another employee in your existing business to say, do you want to take this car over? We tend to find, Neil, in truth, is that these are emotive purchases. A car is still very emotive. Look at people with company cars. I want it brighter, faster, and glitzier than the other person. So, if I've got a Nissan Leaf and I'm leaving and my employer says, right, there's a Nissan Leaf available here for you. It's got X miles on it. It's a bit used, but you can take up the rental payments and it's this. And I look, and for the same amount, I could get myself an i3.
Okay, what do you mean?
So that's the challenge with it. So the simple answer is we say no. These are regulated contracts governed by HMRC, governed by the FCA from a finance perspective, and it is very difficult to transfer.
Thank you for that, mate. Much appreciated. Your camera's just gone off, but don't worry, I can still hear you loud and clear.
Calamitous day.
Oh, mate, listen, you've done a wonderful job this morning. I'm just going to ask the audience, Nick, while we finish up, if there are any further questions for us this morning. As always, Jackson Lee, stand up to the plate and put something on for us. Very, very informative. The only thing for me, and again, I've just renewed my car, but it's the mileage thing for me. It's that sort of 300 limit. In the respect of, obviously, I would love sort of the 400 so I can get to Newcastle and back, because I don't want to sit there for an hour. So I think we'll all be waiting with bated breath for the bigger capacity when it arrives. So, Nicky, thank you. No questions, but that was great. There we go, Nick, straight away. So,
thank you very much for everybody's time. Hopefully they didn't find it too boring, and for those that stayed awake, thank you.
Nick, you're never boring. That's one thing you're certainly not, Mr. Moen. Guys, thank you for your attendance. It's really appreciative from all of us that you do take your time out of your day to come and listen in. I'm sure there's another webinar next week already booked in. So from me, it's a big thank you and goodbye. And Nick, anything else to add before we go?
Thank you very much. If anybody wants to know further about it, contact details are there, and I'll get the slides over to the headquarters and they can get them out on the back phone. So that's brilliant.
Well done, Nick. Thank you. That will be posted online later on today, guys. If you want to pass it around your offices for friends and family. All right, guys. Take care. All the best. Thanks, Nick.
Bye.
Cheers, mate.
Bye.
Bye-bye.